Okay, hi again, everyone. It's Emma here at Function Point with Mark Wilson, and thanks so much for joining in today's session all about tracking time and time reporting. I think for today, we're probably going to go from about a half hour to 45 minutes, and questions are, of course, welcome throughout the session. I'm just going to take us through a little bit of an agenda here, and then we'll let Mark start the show here. So just hang tight. Just want to go through one little screen here all about our agenda. So today we're going to be learning the different ways in which you can track time in Function Point, learn the recommended best practices for tracking time, and learn how to run some reports on track time. Mark, have I got you there? Have I covered everything that you're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah, and I am recording, so anyone listening today thinks that they'd love to just hear this all over again or want to share this with a colleague. We are recording the session and it'll be posted up later today. So, Mark, should I go ahead and make you presenter so you can start taking us through this material?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, hang tight. Let me work the magic here and see what I can do. Make Mark presenter. Okay, so that hopefully will have done. Oh yeah, and I see your screen now, just the standard I Heart Jobs mini-series screen there.
Okay, got it. And you should be able to see my screen on your side there, my actual screen in the function point system. Let me know
I
whenever you're
do.
able to. Perfect, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for everyone for joining in today. I'm looking forward to going through this webinar. As Emma said, we are going to try to keep it to, well, Emma mentioned half an hour to 45 minutes. I'm always terrible for staying within my time constraints, but I'm going to make a really solid effort to do so today, and I promise you that it will be under an hour, and I'm looking at 45 minutes as the target. So about 45 minutes, we should have this all done, all wrapped up. A few things to mention. Do please feel free to ask questions using the question box or panel in the GoToMeeting either GoToWebinar panel that you'll see on your screen there. And any questions that Emma is able to answer as we're going along via the text box, she will. And I'll be checking in with her every once in a while to see if there's any questions that need to be answered on screen. Anything that we are able to answer today, of course, we will. And if something is perhaps maybe not relevant to the topic or would require a more in-depth review of the question or the answer, then we may refer to following up with you with some answers, just depending on if we're able to get to it today or not. So just to kind of talk about what we're going to be covering here, I'm going to be going over the different methods for tracking time in the system. I'm going to try to get through that pretty quickly, but there are some different options. Tracking time is something at Function Point that we do provide a bunch of different methods of doing it within the system. So I'm going to go through those different methods today, and once we've gone through that, I'm then going to show the different ways of reporting on time. And I'm going to show a few areas in the system that are important regarding how the system looks at time, whether it's the value of the time or the targets around billable efficiency and things like that. We're going to be looking at three main ways of reporting on time in the system. So without further ado, let's jump in. And again, please feel free to ask questions while we go along. So right now we're looking at the dashboard of Function Point. We're looking at my demonstration system. You'll notice it says demo up at the top here. And a few things that you may notice a little bit different. Of course, the banner will be different from your company, and there may be some differences in terminology around the main navigation bar. You may call different areas different things than what we're seeing here, so keep that in mind. Furthermore, depending on your access level in the system, you may not see every module that we're seeing here right now. So please keep that in mind as well. But let's start off with the different ways of tracking time in the system. Right now we're looking at a dashboard, and we're looking at what we call the classic dashboard. Now I've customized a bunch of dashboards, and I've renamed this one to be called Creative. This is what I consider to be a standard user dashboard, and it is the default dashboard for all new users if you haven't customized or created any new ones. And what we're seeing here is we're seeing a timesheets panel, list of jobs, a message board or pin notes, and our tasks and to-dos. And tracking time from this particular dashboard is really simple. We're going to start off with our jobs list. Here we have a list of all of my jobs. These are all the jobs that I am a contact on and I'm working on. And if I want to put some time against one of these, it's really simple. Let's say I want to put some time against this Pro Shop signage job. If I click on the timer icon beside the job, it puts the job into my timesheet. I can then choose the service that I'm working on. Every job in the system is going to be built on a category or service group structure where we have a list of services that we can put our time against. Like I said, I'm working on some design work, for, we'll say, 1.5 hours. Now I can type in the duration, just the amount of hours I worked. If it was 45 minutes, well, that's 3/4 of an hour. If it was 2.5 hours, it's 2.5. In this case, we'll say worked on this for 1.5 hours. Put in my description, did this and did that. Click submit. It adds to my daily total and also to the actuals against that job. That is one really simple way of tracking time. One thing I do want to mention is the time clock or the timer, and I can choose to select start, and it's going to start counting for me. Once this hits 20 seconds, hitting stop will populate a duration. 20 seconds is the bare minimum amount of time, and 20 seconds equates to 0.01 of an hour. It's a tiny amount of time. But the point is that this will count for you, and hitting stop will populate your duration. While that's running, let me show you another method. Let's say I'm tracking to a job again, but I can't quite remember the name of the job. Let's say I'm working on a job here called website, and I'm not really sure the name of it, but I'm pretty sure I know the client it's for. It's for a client called Great Atlantic Insurance. So I might type in the word great into my job field here and leave the field, and that's going to show me a list of all of the open and active jobs for my client, Great Atlantic Insurance. Notice the tooltip and show me the job name and the client name. And then I might look at this list and say, okay, well, that's what it was. It was the web maintenance job. So it's the web maintenance job that I was working on. And what am I doing? Well, I'm doing some let's say, some web design here. Click stop, stops the timer, puts in the duration. If the timer had been going for 2 hours, it would have filled in with 2 hours. I can, of course, just type it in, enter my description, and click submit. Now, this job field, like any field with a magnifying glass, is an intelligent field and allows you to put in short forms. I can put in the client name, I can put in the job name, and I can put in the job number or the client code. Now, I have a client called North Shore Auto Group. If I type in NAG, it's going to show me a list of all the jobs for that client, or any job with the word NAG involved in it in some way. If I know the name of the job, and let's say I'm working on my in-house job, I just had an internal meeting. If I have a long list of jobs here and I don't want to have to go scrolling through that, I can just type in the word house, leave the field. It's the only result, so it just fills in. Choose what it is I'm doing. Maybe it's an internal meeting for an hour, and submit that time. That's the basics of tracking time using jobs from the dashboard. The next method I'm going to show is around the tasking. Just want to check in real quickly. Emma, any questions at all so far?
Oh, hey, Mark. No questions so far, but good content. Thank you for this. This is really good.
Yeah, no problem. So looking at your tasks, and this is a common question is, what is the difference between a task and a service? You'll see both drop downs here. Let's clear out this job here for now, even though it doesn't really matter. But you'll notice we have a service and a task drop down. The difference is that the task is the call to action. The task is the thing that you're doing. I could have a task assigned to me that's, the title of the task could be, hey, Mark, have this done by 5 p.m. And maybe it's related to a copywriting service. It could be, hey, Mark, take out the recycling or empty the dishwasher. Maybe that's related to some sort of errand service for the in-house job. The point is that the task could be called anything, and it is the thing that you're supposed to do. So I have a design task for a job called dealership signage. It's due on the 24th. I have 10 hours in my budget to complete this and 7 actual hours against it so far. It's in progress, and therefore I can see a timer icon beside the task. Really common question is, why don't I see a timer icon beside my task? The reason is that task is probably in an assigned state. That's usually the first state you get a task in. It's assigned to you. It's not in progress. You haven't started working on it. Once I want to work on this task and put some time against it, I would then put it into progress, and the timer icon shows up. Click on the timer icon, and it fills out my time sheet with all the information. It fills in the job, the service, the task, the description of what to do, if one was entered. I can enter my description below. I did this and did that. Put in my time. I might have tracked the timer. In this case, I'll say worked for an hour, and submit that, and adds to my daily total, and also real time to the actuals against that task. Notice that my timer or my time clock is still there. I can start that back up again if I want. I can also reset it. And that's really the simplest way of tracking time in the system, is if you do happen to have a task assigned to you, you're just clicking on it, it fills out the data for you, you drop in your time, your description, and submit. Really simple to track time from tasks on the dashboard. One thing I want to show on the dashboard before we move on to the weekly view and the timesheet window is if you don't have a timesheet panel on your dashboard, the reason that might be is if you've customized it. So I have a whole bunch of different dashboards I've created, and one I created just a few minutes ago is called Creative 2. Now let's say that I want some graphical views of job and task summaries, and I'm going to touch on that when we look at reporting. But if I want those views, I also want a good amount of screen real estate to both jobs and tasks. Now I want to be able to see the status of the jobs and the due dates. I'm giving it a bit more screen real estate. Now I want to put some time against, let's say, this logo design task. The timesheet panel is not here. Therefore, when I click on the timer icon, I can still track time. It just opens up an Add Timesheet window. Dialog box is within the browser. It's not a pop-up. I can then put in my duration, say an hour and a half again. I love that value. I'm always putting it in. Enter my description, click Submit, and it adds to my task. So you can track time even if you don't have a timesheet panel on your dashboard. Looking back at my classic, or as I like to call it, my creative, you'll notice at my timesheet panel, I have a weekly view. I also have a timesheet window. Touch on both of those. Going to check in one more time. Have any questions at all?
No, not yet. We've got a quiet bunch today, but that's
Okay.
okay. And everyone just be encouraged to ask. But no, nothing so far. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, no problem. And this is all pretty simple stuff, so I understand why there's no questions here. And just so everyone knows, I am going to try to finish up an overview of tracking time in the next, say 3 or 4 minutes at the most, and then we're going to jump into reporting on time. So from the timesheet panel here on our dashboard, you'll notice that there's a weekly view and a timesheet window. Timesheet window is basically the timesheet panel that we're looking at just popped out. And this allows me to maybe minimize my base system. Maybe I'll even make this window really tiny here so it's taking up less screen real estate. Notice it's also counting for me automatically as soon as it starts counting. Finding what I'm working on here, really simple. Just like before, I can use the magnifying glass. So, I'm working on, let's say, that dealership signage job. So I might type in, the word signage. It's going to give me all the jobs that are related to that. Choose the one I want, dealership signage. Do I have any tasks for this? I actually do. I have a design task. Select it, fills in the related service. Put in my time. Now it's counting for me, so I might hit stop, populates the duration. Let's say I worked on this for half an hour, and submit that. You can also access the timesheet panel from the main nav bar. You're going to find the Find, Add, and View options, the timesheet window, and the weekly view. The weekly view, whether we select it here or here, so if I'm on my dashboard, I can open it up from here. From anywhere else in the system, I can open it up from the main nav bar. The weekly view is a preferred method of tracking time by a lot of people. It's actually my preferred method. It's really straightforward. It gives us a weekly. We have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so on. It allows us to put in our time across the entire week, including descriptions and monitoring our daily and our weekly totals. Now let's say that, and you'll notice it remembers everything that you put time against both this week and last week. These are all items I put time against both this week and last week. If there was something I put time against last week but hadn't worked on it this week, we'd see it a little bit differently. See if there's an example if I jump into the past. Here's an example. The week of June 2nd, I have all these items I tracked time against. These are items I track time against the week previous. When you open up your timesheet weekly view, you're going to see a list of everything you've already worked on, and you can drop in time for those. Let's come back to this week. I'm going to say I'm working on a job called NAG Biz Cards, North Shore Auto Group Business Cards. So I'm going to type in NAG, it's the client code. Just like before, it's going to give me a list of all the jobs where the letters NAG involved in it. Here's my NAG Biz Cards. Select it. I don't have a task assigned to me for this, but it is what I'm doing. So I'm going to put some time against some documentation that I did, and I'm going to say that I worked on this for, let's say, an hour on Tuesday, and I worked on it again for an hour today with a description. Everything saves automatically. Leave the field, and it's saved. There is no submit button. It means you can't enter a whole bunch of time here and then somehow lose the data. if you close the window, the power goes out, it doesn't matter. Everything's saved right away. If you need to make a change, simply come in, make the change, the duration or the description, leave the field, you get a confirmation that your changes were saved. You can jump back and forth between different weeks and put time into the past. One thing that I was working with an agency recently, and they actually had never really tracked time before. They had attempted to do so, and it hadn't really worked out using Excel sheets and pieces of paper and email and things like that. They're coming to a system like Function Point, and they're not wanting to overwhelm their staff. And what my recommendation was to them is they were really concerned about their staff not being overwhelmed or not liking it and not being on board. So my recommendation was allow them to use the weekly view, and you know what? If they want to put in all their time at 5 p.m. on Friday for the entire week, let them do it. As long as they're getting it in there, great. Now, if this was a company that I was working with that had been tracking time for years and there was already a culture established, whether it's in Function Point or another program, and they're using Function Point for time tracking, I'd recommend tracking it on a daily basis and, if possible, even on an hourly basis. It's always best if you can put in the time immediately after you spent it. That's going to be the most accurate and going to give you the best data, best bang for your buck. So as long as the time's getting in there, that's the main thing. But if you can get it in as soon as you do it, fantastic. If not, use the weekly view and pump up your week, fill up your week with the time that you need. Now, is there any questions at all? I think I might have saw one.
Yeah. Hey, Mark. We've had a few come in that I'm just addressing as we go. Jill had reached out saying she wasn't seeing the weekly view option, and I'm thinking that's permission based, so she's going to look into that. And Jill, by all means, if you remain stuck with that, just let me know. And then Rhonda was asking a little bit about sort of marking timesheets as approved, which I was just describing that other clients we've seen, I think, use more of that marking them as posted routine, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the posting is really the posted. Oftentimes in our system refers to approved. It's a timesheet that has been posted, and I find it less common these days, but it is something that is available, and I can maybe even touch on that in just a little bit.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
No problem. So let's jump into reporting here, and Emma, if you do need to. If you do need to interrupt me at all, and if there's something that you want me to check out, do feel free to let me know.
Well, you mean like assign you a task to take out the recycling and make you track an hour and a half to it?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know
Okay.
if it'll take me that long, but we don't have too much paper here. We try to be as paperless as possible, but
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark.
no worries. All right, so let's jump into the reporting. There's 3 different types of reporting that I'm going to show today, and there's really 3 types of reporting in Function Point. There are on-screen graphical reports / on-screen interactive. It may not be graphical, but reports that are on-screen and interactive and often graphical. There are then custom search reports. We're doing a custom search and reporting on the result of that. And then finally, there are standardized reports. And I'm going to show them to you in that order. So the first being on-screen and graphical. And let me repeat myself. They may not always be graphical. There's a few on-screen that may not be exactly graphs, more like lists, but they're on-screen and they're interactive. But here's an example I want to show you from the dashboard. I highly recommend choosing to customize your dashboard and playing around with this. It's easy to do. Look at the different panel options and play around with them. But there's 3 different panel sizes: a small square, 4 actually: small square, long rectangle, whether horizontal or vertical, a 2 amounts rectangle, or an entire screen. And each of those is going to have different types of things that you could put into them. So I'd recommend playing around with this. You're going to easily find everything that we're going to be showing here today. But looking at the dashboard, the first thing I want to show is a utilization summary. And I'm going to touch on what this is and where it's pulling from. Utilization is billable utilization for staff. Now, a lot of these reports that are on screen and graphical and also interactive have filters. I'm looking at all staff for last month. I might put in a date range that's custom. I might narrow it down to specific staff people. In this case, we're going to look at last month for all staff. And this is then showing us the target billable amount versus the actual billable amount and the target to actual utilization. What we're seeing here is the top line is showing us the target billable. Now the target billable is pulling based on the information that you have on the staff details page in the admin section. I'm going to show you that in just a second. So the target billable for the total month was 2,297 hours. The actual billable was 1,855. It's 81%. Now 81%, if that was the actual total billable utilization, would be really solid, but it's not. It's 81% of the target. So we were 81% of the target for the billable utilization. And again, I can narrow this down to a single staff person or all staff and within any date range. Profit. A lot of the system is being driven by time. If you look at things like the profitability of your internal services, that's coming from the cost rate of each staff person's timesheets. What is the hourly cost of every timesheet that's entered? So when we look at the profitability of internal services, and we have $160,000 of internal services that were invoiced last month, or sorry, that were entered last month, or invoiced, I should say. The cost value of that time and then the profitability of those internal services. Now the cost value is coming from the staff's details page. That's two things that we've looked at so far. The target billable utilization and the cost value that's coming from the staff details page. Where you're going to find that and where this is coming from that's driving a lot of reports in the system based on time is in the admin section under system setup, sorry, my apologies, in the admin section under rate and staff management and under staff, you'll see here. Now selecting a staff person is then allowing us to see their staff admin page where we can state their hourly cost and their billable target. What is their billable target percentage? Now the hourly cost is something that different companies will track and calculate in different ways. But a traditional way of calculating staff hourly cost is taking the salary of the individual and adding a percentage of overhead. And how you track that percentage of overhead is something that different companies will do in different ways. But a really easy way to do it is gather up all overhead, everything from the rent for the office to insurance, to benefits, everything. Add up all the overhead, divide it equally among staff people, add that to their salary, and divide that salary by a number of hours. That is then going to give you their hourly cost. Now the number of hours that you divide it by is typically going to be about 40 hours per week times 52 weeks. If you want to be really specific and you want to take out, any kind of unpaid time that a person might have, then go for it. But typically it's going to be 40 hours a week times 52 weeks. The billable hours target is based on how many hours do you think that should be billable of that time. A good target for billable hours for a staff person like a designer is 1,600 hours per year. That is a really good industry average for how many hours should be billable for, say, like a designer in a yearly period. Now, 40 hours times 52 weeks comes out to 2,080 hours. 1,600 billable hours divided by 2080 is coming out to about 77%. We usually find between 70% and 80% to be a good target for billable utilization. 80% is actually a little bit on the high side. So 72 I find is a pretty common one I'm seeing a lot right now. But you could go as high as maybe 75, 77, or even 80 if you're talking about someone who you expect to be really, really billable. Go beyond that, hell, if you want to, go crazy, but that's usually what I see there. Now, those two values are really important. They're going to drive a lot of the time reporting in the system. You're going to want to make sure that you have values there for every single staff person. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to look at a utilization. You're not going to be able to look at an accurate profit summary. Continuing on the thread of on-screen reports before I check in with Emma here, is a few others. Timesheet summary. The total target amount of time, in this case for all staff for last month. Again, based on the filters. Could be for single staff or all staff or whatever date range you'd like. But in this case, it's all staff for last month, had 2,784 available hours to them. They worked 2,264. So there's a bit of time gap there that wasn't either entered yet or wasn't worked. We have 1,855 that were billable, and we have 409.5 that were non-billable. That's a pretty good utilization, but there's still that gap that needs to be tracked. Now, With regards to the available time, it's another thing that's really the third of the three main things in the admin section I want to show around where is this coming from. The available time is coming from the admin section. It's coming from an area that we call the work calendar. Under system setup, you're going to find the work calendar. Now, the work calendar is where we're stating what does the agency work, what days of the week, and how many hours per day. I apologize that the dates on these holidays are wrong. I update my system and sometimes those don't align. But you want to put in your holidays there too. But the days of the week and how many hours do they work, and then if a person works a different amount of hours, so say Emma here works 4 hours on Tuesdays, but she works let's say 10 hours on Fridays and 10 hours on Thursdays, then that would be this individual's specific work schedule. So you can put in specific work schedules for each individual, but that is where that's coming from. That is where the available hours within a time period is coming from. It's coming from the admin section in the work calendar. So those are a few of the on-screen interactive reports, and the reason that I call them interactive reports is that they are interactive. If I want to see, well, what are the 409 non-billable hours entered last month, I can select this, and it's going to bring me to a list of those timesheets. So real quick recap, you're going to want to target billable utilization for every staff, an hourly cost for every staff, and a work calendar for every staff. Those are three really important things to have filled in order to be able to effectively report on time out of the system. Emma, any questions I can answer on any of that?
We did not have any questions about that. Jill and I are working back and forth to sort out a little issue for her, which we'll get through. But no, everything's looking great. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, no problem. So let's continue in this vein of reporting. A few other things you'll find, and I mean there's some other basics on here, the dashboard task and time summary, with regards to time, how many of our tasks are within 80% of estimated or overestimated, over budget.
Hey, sorry, Mark. I'm taking you up on your interruption offer. You were saying something. We had a couple people say, "What were those three things you said again? Can you say those three things again, please?" I admit I was corresponding with Jill, so I actually missed them as well. You must have said three really magical things there.
Yeah, for sure, no problem. There's three really important things to be able to allow you to effectively report time out of the system. And one is the hourly cost of staff people. It's under admin, rate and staff management, staff rate, staff remissions. On the staff's admin page, so you need to come into the admin section and click on a staff person. Click on a staff person, you're in their admin staff edit page. This is where you're putting in things like their hire date and their username and password. This is where you're establishing their hourly cost. So that was one of the three, hourly cost. The next is the billable target efficiency. What percentage of their total hours should be billable? And I recommend putting somewhere between 70 and 80%. 70 on the low end, 80% on the high end. And that's for like a designer. If this is an office admin person, maybe 10% is their target. If you have an accountant, maybe 0% is their target. I mean, it depends on the situation. But as far as a billable staff person, somebody who should be doing billable work all the time, somewhere between 70 and 80%. So that was the two of the three, the hourly cost and the billable target found in the admin staff area. The third is the work calendar, because in order to look at load balance and availability, in order to look at available time versus actual time, you need to have an available time. You need to have somewhere in the system where we're stating this is the amount of time a person is going to work. And where you're going to find this is admin, system setup, the work calendar. And correct me if I'm wrong, Emma, but this is something that you usually cover in your weekly webinar around the admin section. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, we do usually review that every Thursday, and we have documents about it as well, of course.
Awesome. So this is where we're establishing for the company what days of the week do we work and how many hours a week or how many hours per day do we work, and then for each specific person, what are their hours? Maybe Emma works 4 on Tuesdays and 10 on Thursday and Friday. So there's, that's where you're going to establish the available hours. So those are the three important items that you're going to want to make sure you have filled in. So we've talked a bit about the dashboard reporting options, and I'm not going to spend any more time on it. There's a lot of them. You can navigate back and forth between them. It's really about going in and customizing those dashboards and playing around with them. They're pretty straightforward as far as what they represent. So it's probably not going to be too confusing. But that's something you'll want to play around with. The next thing I'd like to show is custom search reporting, where we're doing a custom search and then reporting on the result of that search. So let's start off with some basics. What are all the jobs that are open right now? In fact, I want to see all the jobs open right now due in the next, like, I don't know, maybe like 2 months or 6 weeks or something like that, and what is their estimated versus actual time. So I might do a job find, and I'm going to say, well, show me all the jobs that are open or in production or with the client, and your statuses might be different. And I want to see everything that is due between today and, let's say, 6 weeks. Now, anytime you have a date field, you can always put your cursor into the field and select on the calendar. But if you type in short forms, as long as you spell the words correctly, which I know is a problem for me, then it'll fill in. If I spell it wrong, if I put in, 2 weeks, it'll drop in 2 weeks. But if I put in 3 E's, it's going to tell me this is not a valid date. Oh, well, there you go. Actually, it's going to be an error there. It's kind of like an error. But again, so you can use ranges. So let's say between today and, let's say, 6 weeks from now. We'll drop in those dates for us within these statuses, and let's do a find. That's producing the results of our search. Now, the results of our search is coming in a list view, and these list views, especially with the new upgrade, are very handy in producing reports. Right now, I'm seeing financial information. I might want to choose to see something different. I can look at an editable view, but I'm not going to show that today. Instead, what I'm going to show is managing columns. I might decide, okay, well, I want to see hour information. I don't want financials right now. I want to see estimated actual and variance on hours and variance percentage. Also, maybe I'm going to take out this edit field. I don't need that. I'm going to maybe take out the project or other things, or add whatever I want. I'm also going to order these. I want to see it estimated hours and then actual. Then I want variance on hours and variance percentage. That looks pretty good. Maybe I want due date beside the name. Order that in the way I want it. Save the columns. And I'm then seeing, the estimated actual variance in hours and percentage variance of budget. So this is a really simple way of saying, okay, well, what are all the jobs and what's their estimated versus actual hours? And we've gone over on this one. The rest of them are actually pretty under budget, so that's looking pretty good. Maybe I'll produce this into a PDF. And that's going to show me, the total for estimated versus actual and the variance. 600 hours left on all the jobs due in the next 6 weeks. A question I was asked literally just this morning was, I want to see all the tasks that were done. I want to see everything that was completed, maybe the last month or last week, and I want to see what, how many of those tasks do we go over on as far as time? How many went over budget with regards to time? What I might do in that case is a task find, and I can say, okay, well, I want to look at all the tasks that were completed between last Monday to today. All the tasks that were completed between last Monday. Now, last Monday was the 16th. So when I leave the field, it puts in June 16th until today's date, last Monday until today. So all the tasks that were completed in that time. And I might narrow this down by staff or groups of staff. And I might say, show me, all of the designers. I want to see all the designers here. Or, I could say, show me everyone. So I might, just select everyone here, find tasks. And if you just leave, you don't need to select the people every single time. It's going to show you everyone just by default unless you specifically select some people. But that is then bringing me to the results of my search. So I have 26 tasks that have been completed this week. I can then see the estimated actual and variance on hours. It actually looks like I sorted this based on variance earlier. That's something I was going to show. Maybe I want to see, right now maybe I'll sort it by due date, but perhaps I want to clear that sort, and I want to see, what tasks do we go most over budget on? So I might sort this by that column. On this pre-production task here for the New York Fashion Week promo video, went over by 7.5 hours. Maybe I want to customize this due time. I don't need due time. We don't really use that all that much. So I'm going to choose to manage these columns. And I'm going to take out the edit option. I'm going to take out, let's say, the priority. Didn't seem like we're using that much. I'm going to take out the due time. And everything else here looks pretty good. In fact, we'll leave the service. Everything here looks pretty good. Maybe I'll take the due date and put it over by status. Save that. And there we go. So I have that new list in the custom sort I put it into. And then I'm going to produce a PDF. And I can see, these are the tasks we went over budget on. And then here are some tasks that were completed this week This one is 8.5 hours under budget. In total, for all of the tasks that were completed this week, we're actually 17 and 3/4 hours under budget. So not too bad. Those are some of the ways you could do a custom search. Another, of course, really obvious example, because we're working with time, would be doing a timesheet find. Now, I want to see all the timesheets between, let's say this week, last Monday to today. I want to see all the timesheets for this week, find those timesheets. So I have 142 timesheets for this week. And again, really quickly, I'm going to manage these columns. I'm going to take out some of these values that we don't need. And then, maybe I'll put in some values. So, perhaps I want to see the billing rate. I want to see the cost rate. Or in fact, let's actually take out the rates and look at the total amounts. I want to see billing status. Did we bill the time or not? I want to see, you'll notice here I'm seeing staff initials. It's just the initials. I want the full name, so I'm going to put in just the first name. Oh, that's good enough for me. And then, I'm going to put the first name over to the far left, and the date of the timesheet, job, let's say, service group. We don't really need the service group, but we want the service. Description, I don't really want the description right now. I don't need that either. Then the hours. Post, I'm going to put to the far right. We then have the cost amount, total amount, and then let's even put in the gross profit. All right, save that. And we got a whole new way of looking at this, a whole new customized report based on the columns we customized. These are the amount of hours. This was the cost of the time. This was the billable amount of the time, the gross profit, whether or not it's actually been billed. So all these time, all these time where it was entered today, we haven't billed for any of it yet, and whether or not it's been posted. Now, posted, and I wasn't actually really going to cover this, but posted relates to whether or not the time has been approved. And posted time is approved time. And this is something that some agencies do and some don't. But an easy way of doing it is doing a timesheet find based on the date range, maybe a month or maybe 2 weeks. And then looking at this and saying, okay, well, I'm going to do a quick review. So maybe I'll export this or I'll produce some reports based on this, review it, and if I should choose to do so, post that time. Posting it is approving that time. These are all now green timesheets. Of course, I can unpost them too. And that's a process for approving those timesheets if it's something that you should choose to track. The next thing that we're going to touch on is some more of the standardized reports. Before I do that, any questions at all that I can answer on?
Hey, Mark. Yeah, I think we've got a good one in from Joanne, just asking about the options to dump the data into a spreadsheet like a CSV, Excel, rather than PDF. So maybe if you could just point out where that button lives, that would be fantastic.
Yep, very good point, actually, and I should have mentioned that earlier. So good question. What you'll notice is on any list view, you're going to find a button that says print and a button that says CSV. They're going to be beside each other. Print is basically take what I'm looking at and turn it into a PDF. So whatever custom column selection order structure you put in, the print option is going to give you that. Whereas the CSV is a master export. And this is going to open up into, well, in this case, I'm going to open this up with Excel. And we're going to get a master export of all the data relating to what we're looking at. So the export is basically giving you the data in a spreadsheet as opposed to a PDF. And you can do that for anything. You can do that for the jobs and the tasks. And if I click on the module header, it's going to repeat the last search that I did. Maybe I want to jump back to all the tasks completed this week. Click on the header. Maybe I want to jump back to all the jobs that are due in the next 6 weeks. Click on the header. It's going to repeat that last search. I can then export this again, and this is a good example of a really robust export. We're getting all of the data relating to these jobs. Pretty much every data point you could possibly think of is going to come into that export. That's a really good point. And something I probably should have mentioned is that you can export any data at any time. That's going to give you additional options for creating your own kind of custom reports based on the information that you've found in your custom search.
Thanks, Mark. That's great.
No problem. So let's now take a look at some of the more standardized reports. And there's two report sections in the system. One thing I should mention as well is that the list views are often going to have reports that are standardized. So, I might want to look at, say, a job list by client report. And this is not a PDF of what we're looking at. This is a report that's showing us information in a standardized way. So you're going to find some standardized reports from the list views. Also, if you look at a jobs details page, you're going to find a reports module, and you can see some reports from here. And of course, a lot of these are going to be related to time, analysis of hours by job, service group, and so forth. I recommend reviewing the reports tab on the jobs details page and also in the main report section. Another thing as well that's pretty cool on the jobs details page is a bit of the summary. Similar information we're seeing on dashboards. For this job, we estimated 75 hours, we've delegated 75 hours, and we've tracked 79.5 billable hours and 0 non-billable hours. So we've gone a bit over budget. We've gone over budget by $450. You can see how much you've invoiced and our cost. Cost, of course, coming from the time that's been entered and the cost value of that. There's some good reports on the jobs details page. But if we were to go into the reports section, there's a few that I want to show. Let's look firstly at the time section. That would make a lot of sense. So some simple ones. First of all, how many hours did people work in a period? So payroll hours. I want to see everything from, let's say the start of the month until today. Everything from the start of the month until today. And what this is going to give me is every single staff person. Let me zoom in a bit here. So every single staff person, the date, the day of the week that was, the number of hours that they worked that day. So I'm able to go through here and say, okay, well, we're getting 8 hours a day here for a lot of these people. Some worked more days than others, though. So I can see that some people, either didn't work those days or didn't put in time on those days. And then I can see the non-billable and the billable total combined, the billable value and the cost value. So that's a really simple, how much time did people work within that span? A few others that I'd like to show from here, one around efficiency. So I'm going to look at billable efficiency for all staff. Let's say for, again, the start of the month until today. The size and scope of these reports, based on the filters, isn't really changing all that much. It's giving it to us in a PDF. This is showing us, each staff person, the number of jobs they worked on, the payroll hours and the total hours. The only reason that would differ is if they were running multiple timers at the same time, which is pretty uncommon. But then, so they're pretty much always going to be the same. The total hours that was worked, the amount of it that was non-billable, the amount that were billable, the efficiency, billable efficiency of each staff person, the billable value of the work, the cost value of the work, the variance in dollars, and the variance in percentage. Variance in percentage representing each staff person's net effective multiplier. So those are some interesting reports. Another one that's a good example of something that's a bit more detailed, it actually says detailed, is a timesheet review. And let's look at this let's keep with the same theme for the month here. And what this is going to give us is a very robust Excel report. And what this is going to show, and I'm probably going to zoom this in so it's a bit easier to read here. What this is going to show is multiple tabs. Every single person, every single staff person. And then for every single staff person, what are the clients that they worked on? What was the job and what were the services that they worked on in that span? And then how many hours for, each day and the date did they put in on those items? And then if there was an estimated amount of hours, how does it compare to the actual? 5 of the 8 hours coming out to 63%. It's then giving me some totals, total hours, billable hours. We can then see a more specific overview of every single timesheet. So this is a really, really detailed report with a tab for every single staff person outlining exactly what they did within that and if they've gone over or under budget on things. That's a really, really detailed Excel report. And again, we're getting these from the report section under time. So reports and time reports. Now there's actually other reports that are around time that actually aren't in the time section. An example would be a utilization report. And we've talked a bunch about the target billable utilization, and there's some on-screen graphical reports that are related to that. Another one is a staff utilization report. Let's continue the theme here of the month of June. This is a report that's opening up in Excel as well. And what this is going to show us is high level, so it's not nearly as detailed down to the timesheet. It's more kind of high level. Each staff person, we can then see their target billable efficiency based on what you put in the admin section, the total available hours based on the work calendar. Right at the start, we talked about those 3 data points. We talked about the cost amounts. We talked about their target billable efficiency or utilization, and the work calendar representing that is going to be used to calculate the available hours. So their percentage target, total available hours, and the target hours based on that. 112 hours was available, 82% of that is 91.84. 96 total hours were worked, so that's coming under total available hours, and 80 of those hours were billable. So they should have worked 91.84 billable hours, they only worked 80 billable hours. There's then some values around whether it was external or internal. This is basically relating to whether it's for a client or whether it's for your company. Some agencies will have internal jobs that they consider billable. It's pretty uncommon that agencies track this. I wouldn't worry too much about those values around internal billable versus external billable. It's not a very common thing, but it is available. But what is pretty common is wanting to be able to see the total billable percentage and comparing that to their target billable percentage. Because we're zoomed in here, we're not really seeing both. But there's their total billable percentage compared to their target. So Alon here worked 51 hours of billable time compared to 96 total. That's coming out to 53.13% billable compared to his 72% target. So he's not really on his game there as far as his target versus actual billable utilization. And then, I talked about, and the last thing I want to mention here before we just check in on any questions, I talked about how time relates to so much of the system. It really does. If you have cost values established for every staff person, it means that you're going to be able to look at something like a profit analysis report. If we look at a profit analysis report, yes, this is not really a time report. It's not something that's going to show you, the amount of hours somebody worked in their descriptions. But what it is going to show you is the value of the time that was both estimated and actually entered. So the estimated cost of the time based on those cost rates, the actual cost of the time based on the timesheets that were entered multiplied by their cost rates. How does that compare to the estimated and actual billable value of the time? And then how much of it do we invoice of our time and our expenses? And how does that compare to our estimated to our actual? What is our estimated profit? What is our potential profit? These values are basically adding up everything that's billable and assuming that you're going to bill all of it, which is not always the case. And then the actual profit loss, comparing the invoiced amount to the cost amount of the actual work that was done. You wouldn't really look at this and say, well, this is a timesheet report, because it's not. It's not a report on timesheets, but it is using timesheets to provide the data. And that's why it's so important that you have cost amounts for every staff person. Otherwise, you can't get a true profitability there. And it's always difficult to track true profitability when you're looking at staff time. A conversation I was having with an agency just recently was, they'll have a staff person who, their target hours for the week is 40. Their billable target percentage might be 80. But, oftentimes, because it's the nature of the business, they might put in 55 hours that week. Well, they're on salary. They're not getting paid based on the time they work. They're getting paid a salary. But because they put in 55 hours, the system's going to have a much higher cost of that staff person for that week. And therefore, your profitability is going to be looking lower than it actually is, because you're not paying that person for all that time. And those are challenges that you can solve by finding patterns. If you're looking at a staff person, you say, yeah, you know what, this person's supposed to be working about 40 hours a week, but we're a small company. and we're all really invested in the health of this company, and this person is putting in 50 hours a week, 55 hours a week consistently for the last 4 months, then you know what? Let's put their target out. Let's put their in their work calendar that they work 50 hours a week, 55 hours a week. Because they're dedicated and they're wanting to do that. They're putting in that extra time. Let's look at the pattern and then adjust the work calendar to reflect that pattern, so we can get a more accurate profitability and adjust the cost rates around that as well. Now, if a person's not working 2,080 hours per year, they're working 2,500 because they're one heck of an awesome employee, then adjust their cost rates to reflect that. Those are the types of things. Those are the decisions that you can only make by seeing patterns, and you're only going to see those patterns emerge if everyone's tracking their time. You have cost rates in there, you have targets in there, you have the work calendar in there, and you're able to look and see things over time and make better decisions based on those patterns. Takeaways from today: I highly recommend to review the custom dashboard options. I highly recommend to review the reporting options in both time and also plan and analyze as well. Check those out. Take a look at the reports in the job section too. So look at the two report sections, job specific and system wide. Look at those, look at the dashboards, and make sure that you get in those cost rates, those billable targets, and the work calendar all filled out. I know I'm 8 minutes. I'm sorry, 7 minutes under
Yeah.
my max limit here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm done for content. So
Holy smokes.
any questions that I can answer at this time?
I think you're okay. I mean, you've done the content's been great, so we haven't had anybody whinging about it going long or anything like that. So that's fantastic. A couple of questions I've just been answering as we go that I hope I'm addressing sufficiently, and I'll have Mark you look at those with me once the call ends to make sure that I've given the best feedback to those people. Perhaps before you could go, if I could just trouble you to talk a little bit about the help menu, just where people can go for further information. Just even if you just hover over help, and I'll blather.
Yeah, for sure. The help site is it's funny sometimes when I speak with agencies and remind them that the help site is there, and they'll say, oftentimes people say, oh yeah, I forgot about that. The help site it's awesome. We put a lot of work into it. You can go into the help site, you can go into the overall help site or into the training section. And I mean, you know what? Let me actually, Emma, let me pass it off to you. You actually put in way more stuff into this help site than I do, so let me give it
Wow.
off to you, and you can talk about it.
Okay, sure. Well, I'll just do my best here, and thanks, Mark. Just want to point this area out to everyone. Mark, if I could, oh no, you're fine where you are, actually. So what we're going to see here, the homepage is always going to just give you the latest and greatest piece of information, including any release that's happened right there. Community forums is a place I'd encourage people to sign up, become a member of the forum. Doing so will enable you to submit feature requests, but not being signed in, you'll still be able to see all the information here, see what requests have been made. But you can communicate with the with other function point users as well as ourselves through this forum here, trying to encourage people to get in here and use it a bit better. And then if we scroll back up there, just under help, as you were earlier, you'll see the help area divided up.
Are you talking about this
Oh,
here?
sorry. Yeah, help training. Sorry. I'm
Gotcha.
having a blonde moment. There we go. Under training. Thank you. So this section divided up into four areas. For newer users, you'll probably be using that Prime training program. Staff users, people who are new to the system, encourage you to try the self-guided learning programs we have there. Third section there, all about webinars. So you'll find recordings of old webinars there, places to sign up for new ones. And then last but not least, the library really has everything you could hopefully ever need to know about Function Point. And if you cannot find it in the library, then do let me know.
Awesome. One other thing I want to mention, and I don't know where I would show this, but like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, all that good social media stuff. Of course, always want to drive that. So please do follow us, creep us on social media, and check us out. We're always putting pictures of pets and stuff on there. There's a lot of dog photos. We have
Bird photos.
bird photos, food
Hmm.
photos.
There's a
So
daegu on there, even a small rodent friend of ours.
there you go. So yeah, check us out: Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, all that good stuff. Please do follow us in those avenues.
Excellent. Okay, well, thanks, Mark. What I will do, I just want to answer one more thing while we've got everyone. Someone had asked, like, confirming that you'll be able to get a copy of this. Absolutely. I've recorded the session. It will be posted later today. Mark, if you just hover over help one more time, if I could trouble you to do that. There is something there called What's New, the third one down. You will always find there the latest and greatest documents, videos, recordings, places to sign up for things. So we can see there from the 12th, the recording from last week, the webinar that Daniel and I did about email integration and scope creep. And later today or tomorrow, we'll be posting the one we've recorded here today. So that's always a good resource. What I will do, Mark, is I will take away presenter status from you. Can you believe it?
Go for it.
I know, right? I'm going to make myself the presenter. Ta-da! And hopefully I am showing now the correct screen just with the questions marks there. So what we'll do is I will leave the session open for about another 10 minutes, keep answering the questions that have come in since we started wrapping up. And then anything else you need, please let us know. There will be a session this time next week. It is all about expenses and expense reporting. So please be encouraged to sign up for that one as well. But yeah, we'll leave it open for another 10 minutes to answer your questions. The recording will be posted later today or tomorrow. And of course, thank you, Mark, for taking us through all that really great content.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks everyone for joining in today. I enjoyed taking one through, and yeah, we'll enjoy continuing this webinar series.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark, and thanks everyone. We'll keep the questions open, and so keep asking them for a little while yet. Thanks so much, everyone.
Cheers.